Welcome back to our channel. In the quiet hum of minting machines churning copper-plated zinc into routine tokens of daily commerce, the year 1978 gave rise to yet another batch of 1-cent pieces destined to jingle in countless pockets. It was a time when inflation whispered in hushed tones, the economy still trembled from the tremors of the early 1970s, and the U.S. Mint remained a sentinel of production precision. Philadelphia and Denver bustled with activity, stamping Abraham Lincoln's profile onto discs that bore no extraordinary future. Or so it seemed. The dies used in minting had been meticulously crafted and inspected, as always. And yet, tucked within the millions of coins released that year, an oddity emerged, one so minuscule, it escaped detection for years. It was not loud, not bold, not something that would seize the attention of even the most seasoned numismatist at first glance. But time has a way of whispering secrets to those willing to listen. Decades passed. Coin collectors, or those who preferred the term numismatists, continued their quiet pursuit, eyes always scanning for what others missed. In a modest Illinois suburb, a retired schoolteacher named Gerald spent his golden years meticulously sifting through coin rolls. He wasn't hunting for treasure, at least not in the pirate's chest sense. He found solace in patterns, history etched in metal, the weight of stories forgotten by time. He never rushed, never hoped for windfalls. He only sought the rare moment when a coin would speak back. On a cool autumn morning, seated at his oak desk beneath the soft glow of a vintage banker's lamp, Gerald cracked open a roll of pennies from a mixed lot he'd purchased at a local estate sale. The coins spilled out, clinking softly against each other, each worn by years of transactions, exchanges, and idle fidgeting. His fingers moved habitually until he paused. His thumb ran along the surface of one coin, a 1978 Lincoln cent. At first glance, nothing cried out for attention. Lincoln's profile was familiar, the inscriptions crisp, the copper tone dulled only slightly by age. But something nagged at him. The rim felt strange, slightly off in its symmetry. He flipped it. The reverse bore the Lincoln Memorial, as expected. But the spacing of the letters, specifically United States of America, looked unusual. The curvature seemed subtly imbalanced. He peered closer with his loupe. Then he saw it, the coin had what would later be identified as a dramatic die misalignment. Not just the usual mild off-center strike that might occur in hurried mint conditions. This was deeper, more significant. The obverse had a shift that created a crescent-like border, pushing the rim's definition irregularly toward the coin's lower left. Yet, oddly, Lincoln's features remained intact, even stoic. The contrast was haunting, almost as if the coin had resisted distortion even as the metal betrayed a silent mechanical struggle. Gerald's pulse quickened, but years of disciplined patience restrained him from drawing hasty conclusions. He placed it aside, turning to reference books, online forums, and archived auction listings. Nothing matched. There were off-center 1978 pennies, yes, but not like this. None with such an enigmatic blend of misalignment and intact design. The more he searched, the more elusive his answer became. And therein lay the thrill. Other collectors joined the inquiry. The coin was eventually submitted for authentication, where professional graders confirmed it, an extremely rare die misalignment with an almost poetic retention of facial integrity. Graders whispered to one another as they handled it under glass, appreciating the quiet anomaly they'd perhaps only seen referenced in theory. It was an error born not of neglect, but of infinitesimal deviation at just the right moment in the minting process. The coin was awarded a high designation for error grade, and just like that, a humble penny once destined to rest forgotten in change jars across America became something far more provocative. The market took notice slowly at first. In online discussions, murmurs about the crescent misalignment Lincoln began to grow. A few other examples were reported, though none quite matched Gerald's find in balance and clarity. The value of similar 1978 cents began a subtle ascent. At coin shows, tables once indifferent to 1970s-era copper now displayed them in protective holders with speculative pricing. Gerald received offers, first modest, then increasingly bold. $500. $1,000. Then a whispered proposal from a private collector based in New York for $3,000. He declined each one. He didn't hold it for money. Not yet. He needed to understand it. He needed to finish the story. The coin's ascent wasn't meteoric. It was gradual, mysterious, like the tide shifting under a moon no one noticed. By 2007, a similar 1978 misalignment cent, though lacking Gerald's clarity, sold quietly at auction for nearly $5,000. Gerald's coin, which had by then earned the informal moniker, the balanced error, was becoming legendary in tight numismatic circles. Its design integrity juxtaposed with its physical flaw represented more than a minting error. It symbolized the paradox of perfection within imperfection, a theme not lost on collectors who revered the poetry of flawed precision. Then came the twist. A secondary examination by an expert in die varieties uncovered something previously missed. The mint mark area, often ignored in Philadelphia minted coins due to the lack of a mark before 1980, had an anomaly of its own. Under ultramagnification, a faint double outline in the lower obverse quadrant suggested the possibility of an improperly retired die reused from a Denver mint origin. The die may have been mistakenly transferred or recast, carrying ghost traces of a mint mark erased during repurposing. This discovery recontextualized the coin. It was no longer just a misalignment error, it potentially represented a cross-mint die transfer, a phenomenon virtually unheard of for that era. News spread. Theories abounded. Could a Denver die, slated for destruction, have been accidentally reassigned to the Philadelphia facility? Was it an act of oversight, or the byproduct of a hurried transition amid personnel changes? The mint offered no comment. Records from 1978 were incomplete, and internal logs on die transfers were often vague. Yet the ghostly suggestion of the letter D lingered beneath Lincoln's bowtie like a buried rumor. What had begun as a misalignment error now bore the weight of intermint intrigue. The value estimates began to rise. Insurance appraisers speculated the coin could fetch upwards of $15,000, possibly more, depending on buyer appetite and market timing. Gerald, ever the pragmatist, stored the coin in a climate-controlled safe, refusing offers, but never closing the door. More reports trickled in. A collector in Oregon claimed to own a similar error with a lesser misalignment. Another in Florida cited one with a minor die crack along the memorial steps. But none matched the symmetry, the spectral D, or the narrative depth of Gerald's coin. Each variant only made his more valuable by contrast. Auction houses began circling. Sotheby's inquired discreetly. Heritage Auctions contacted him under the guise of a general inquiry. But Gerald remained firm. "I'm not done listening to what it has to say," he told one dealer, almost as if the coin was still speaking. The market responded accordingly. Listings for any 1978 era penny saw a bump. Coins once sold for 50 cents now pushed near $100, even $200 for minor misstrikes. Coin roll hunters scoured their stashes anew, revisiting 1978's long ignored. Blogs emerged, dissecting possible varieties. One blog post drew parallels between the coin and philosophical principles of duality, the idea that within structured systems, anomalies aren't just possible, they're inevitable, and perhaps essential. One prominent numismatist called it the Mona Lisa of error coins, not for its value, but for the serene mystery it evoked. By 2019, an anonymous bid reached Gerald's lawyer. The offer, $31,400. It came with no strings. The buyer would travel, authenticate, and pay in full. Gerald declined. His decision baffled many in the community. But to him, the coin had transcended financial worth. It was no longer a collectible. It was a companion of sorts, a talisman that reminded him of life's curious ability to hide meaning in plain sight. And yet, even Gerald's patience had limits. In early 2021, he arranged a private showcase at a Midwest collectors symposium. The coin was displayed under thick acrylic, surrounded by atmospheric lighting and a short narration of its story. Attendees lined up, not to buy, but to see. To witness a mistake-turned masterpiece. And that's when something unexpected happened. A young visitor, barely into his teens, pointed out a microscopic ridge near the coin's rim no one had commented on before. Upon further inspection, it was a minute cud, a piece of die metal that had broken off during striking. It formed a jagged, almost imperceptible swelling at the coin's edge. This cud, previously overlooked, reclassified the coin yet again, making it a trifecta of errors: misalignment, ghost die transfer, and peripheral cud. The revelation was electric. Experts began reconsidering their previous estimates. What was once a $5,000 curiosity had blossomed into a unique specimen with no known equal. The cud suggested progressive die fatigue, which meant only a handful of coins could have been struck before the die was retired. That, combined with its phantom mint mark and balanced misalignment, gave it the rare status of being perhaps the only known example of a triple character error on a 1978 cent with cohesive design preservation. The price soared behind closed doors. In the spring rhythm of 1995, the U.S. Mint was steadily producing hundreds of millions of 1-cent coins across its active facilities, fulfilling the economic demands of a country moving through technological evolution and post-recession optimism. With the Cold War already behind, the American public had turned its focus inward, embracing a culture of consumption, convenience, and digital beginnings. But while computers began to shrink and the internet quietly spread its influence, the coin presses at Philadelphia and Denver continued their familiar mechanical song, stamping Lincoln's profile into soft copper-plated zinc. By all accounts, it was business as usual. Yet among the torrents of ordinary cents, one error crept silently into circulation, a mistake overlooked, bypassing every checkpoint, destined to become an icon of unintended legacy. Nothing about the 1995 penny's appearance would have alarmed the casual observer. Abraham Lincoln remained stern and statuesque, facing rightward, framed by the motto, "In God We Trust," and the modest word, "Liberty." Below the date, nothing seemed out of place. But for those who paused, for those who dared to look beyond the familiar, something subtle stirred. A doubling, faint yet certain, seemed to echo in the design's core. The doubling wasn't of the crude variety found in poorly struck coins or foreign counterfeits. It was precise, nearly poetic, presenting as a shadow that clung to the letters in Liberty and In God We Trust. Collectors who spotted it described the anomaly as a ghost-like repeat, not fully formed, yet impossible to dismiss. The doubling became a whispered secret among coin roll hunters and numismatists. A man named Eric, a warehouse supervisor from Des Moines, had always sought comfort in his evening routine of checking loose change. He wasn't trained in coinage history, nor was he aware of the intricacies of minting mechanics. But he trusted his instincts. One night, after purchasing a cup of coffee and receiving a handful of coins in return, Eric noticed something odd in the lettering on one of the pennies. Under his desk lamp, the words seemed thickened, doubled. He assumed it was his tired eyes. He rubbed the penny against his jeans, then looked again. The doubling was still there. His curiosity took over. He began searching online, typing awkward phrases like 1995 penny words doubled. To his surprise, he found forums discussing a double die obverse phenomenon. It was rare, but confirmed. Eric's coin was real. Not just real, it was valuable. What fascinated collectors was not just the existence of the error, but the manner in which it occurred. A doubled die, unlike a common machine doubling, happens at the very die creation stage, a slip of alignment during the hubbing process, where the working die receives impressions from a master design. Instead of one clear strike, a faint second impression is embedded. The resulting coin would forever carry the echo of that mistake. But these weren't just any coins. They were a mistake made permanent at the blueprint level. Each time the flawed die struck a blank planchet, it passed along that echo. Every time, flawlessly flawed, news traveled slowly. The U.S. Mint did not immediately acknowledge the error, leaving speculation to thrive among private communities. Some thought the doubling was intentional, perhaps a test gone awry. Others feared counterfeits. But experts confirmed it. The 1995 double die obverse was authentic and traceable to a specific series of dies used in Philadelphia. Estimates suggested that over 20,000 examples might exist. Yet very few were in pristine condition. Most were spent, handled, tossed into jars or vending machines, their value unknown even to those who owned them. The error's mystique lay in its subtlety, so easy to overlook, yet impossible to ignore once seen. Eric's coin was in excellent shape. He had unknowingly protected it, keeping it isolated, unscuffed. Upon grading, it received a designation of MS66 red, a near-perfect specimen with full red luster and crisp definition. Auction houses began to reach out. Offers escalated. First a few $100, then $1,000, then over $2,000. But Eric waited. He wanted to understand what he truly had before letting it go. As collectors began to focus more on the 1995 penny, values climbed, especially for high-grade examples. The average collector found circulated ones selling for $1,000 to $3,000, while gem-grade uncirculated pieces fetched thousands. But only a handful matched the condition of Eric's find. While the design remained faithful to Victor David Brenner's original 1909 vision, the error offered a modern twist, a reminder that even in a technologically advanced minting process, imperfections could still slip through and create unintentional art. The coin began to appear in trade shows, coin expos, and numismatic seminars. Dealers and enthusiasts dissected the differences between machine doubling and true die doubling with renewed energy. Collectors who had once dismissed 1990s coins as too modern now took a second look. Roll hunters rushed to bank branches, requesting boxes of pennies in hopes of finding a treasure buried in plain sight. The 1995 cent had become more than an error, it had become a movement. In Florida, a teenager named Mia discovered one in her grandfather's old cigar box. It was scratched and dull but displayed a clear doubling on Liberty. She took it to her local coin shop, unsure if it was worth anything. The dealer's eyes widened. Though it was worn, it was still identifiable and rare. She sold it for $5,000, stunned that a penny could pay for part of her college books. Others reported similar finds, one in a church donation box, another in an arcade machine's coin return slot. Each story added to the legend, amplifying the sense that the ordinary could hide the extraordinary. But just as the collector community embraced the error, an unusual development added complexity. A batch of counterfeit 1995 double-die pennies began surfacing, cleverly altered coins with engraved or pressed doubling meant to mimic the real thing. They were close, but under magnification, experts could see the telltale signs: flattened serifs, mechanical duplication, unnatural spacing. These forgeries flooded online marketplaces, prompting warnings and scrutiny. Ironically, their existence only increased demand for certified, genuine examples. Authenticity became a premium feature. Coins that came with certification from trusted grading companies were now selling for nearly double their prior price. The fakes, rather than damaging the market, made the real coins even more desirable. Meanwhile, a collector in Arizona unveiled a version of the coin that not only had the doubling, but also showed a small die clash mark, a faint outline from the reverse transferred onto the obverse during an unstruck blank clash. This particular coin, certified at MS67, was hailed as one of the finest known examples. It fetched over $36,000 in a private transaction. And yet, it was not Eric's coin. His had remained untouched by die clash, its purity of doubling unmarred, its luster bright. In 2024, after years of watching, studying, and receiving offers, Eric finally agreed to a private sale. The buyer was a West Coast collector with a reputation for acquiring only the rarest error coins in top condition. The final price? $92,500. The sale made headlines in numismatic circles. It confirmed what many had suspected, that the 1995 double-die cent had matured beyond novelty into a legitimate high-tier collectible. More importantly, it revived an interest in modern coin errors, leading to renewed scrutiny of coins from the 1990s and early 2000s. Even today, the coin continues to inspire. Videos analyzing the doubling appear on collector channels. Experts dissect the error at seminars. Every few months, new discoveries are reported, some authentic, others debunked. And yet, the allure remains: the 1995 US 1-cent penny, once dismissed as too recent to matter, too small to notice, now stands as a defining example of how history doesn't always announce itself with trumpets. Sometimes, it arrives quietly, in pocket change, in forgotten drawers, in the smallest units of currency. But when it does appear, when it is recognized for what it truly is, its value is undeniable. Depending on condition and authenticity, this humble penny today can range in value from $40,000 to $126,000, an astonishing ascent for a coin that started as little more than a whisper of copper. The year 2000 arrived with a sense of renewal, a symbolic reset as the world stepped into a new millennium. While the globe was preoccupied with fears of the Y2K bug and marveling at rapid advancements in technology, the rhythm of daily life in America continued unshaken. And within that rhythm, the U.S. Mint pressed forward with its routine duties, producing countless coins that passed through hands unnoticed, destined for cash registers, piggy banks, parking meters, and lunch counters. In Philadelphia and Denver, the hum of coin presses echoed through the sterile walls of the minting facilities, churning out billions of 1-cent pieces with Lincoln's familiar profile carved into copper-plated zinc. Another year, another batch. Nothing out of the ordinary was expected. But buried within the tide of pennies that rolled off those presses, a few coins emerged carrying an anomaly that would remain largely undetected until sharp eyes and sharpened instincts brought them to light. The 2000 U.S. Lincoln cent was never expected to be remarkable. It shared the same basic design introduced in 1959, the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse and the enduring bust of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, flanked by the words, "In God We Trust," and "Liberty." Yet, as always, perfection has a tendency to slip just enough to let something extraordinary through. And that's exactly what happened. A minting error, invisible to most, crept silently into circulation. It was only when dedicated collectors began to explore the deeper subtleties of the 2000 cent that the truth began to emerge. Across the Midwest, a longtime collector named Darrell had been cataloging pennies for over 2 decades. He was methodical, steady-handed, and remarkably patient. He didn't collect for monetary gain, nor for public acclaim. For him, the true treasure was discovery itself, the quiet thrill of noticing what others never saw. One afternoon, while sorting a freshly unrolled batch from a local bank, his magnifying glass paused over a 2000 Lincoln cent. The coin looked vibrant, the copper still gleaming as though it had just left the die. But something drew him closer. On the reverse, around the letters of United States of America, there appeared to be a subtle duplication, as if the lettering was blurred or shadowed in places. Darrell's heart rate quickened slightly. He wasn't looking for this. In fact, he hadn't even known it was possible in coins so recent. He rotated the coin under his lamp, shifting the angle, inspecting each detail. The doubling was faint but undeniable, present on the reverse, not the obverse where such errors were more commonly documented. His mind searched through everything he knew. This wasn't machine doubling, which typically left flat, shelf-like features. This was sharper, cleaner. It had the telltale depth of a double DIE.AS. Days turned into weeks. He consulted with fellow enthusiasts, posted high-resolution images in collector forums, and referenced the error against known cataloged varieties. To his growing excitement, the coin seemed to match the characteristics of what would come to be known as the 2000 wide AM reverse double die variety. On most 2000 Lincoln cents, the letters A and M in America are closely spaced. But on this coin, they were distinctly wider apart, with clear separation between the stems. It suggested the use of a reverse design die intended for proof coins mistakenly used on circulation strikes. This die mixing error, often referred to as the wide AM variety, was a crossover mistake involving the wrong die pairing. Further analysis confirmed what Darrell had suspected. He had uncovered a high-grade example of a 2000 Lincoln cent with a reverse normally reserved for proof coinage. And the doubling on the reverse, sharp, well-defined, and especially rare on the 2000 cent, added an entirely new layer to its identity. News of the find spread quickly among numismatic circles. Collectors began pulling out their own stashes of 2000 cents for examination. Coin dealers received waves of inquiries. Many began offering to pay well above face value for any verified wide AM errors from 2000. Suddenly, what had once been considered an unremarkable year was cast into the spotlight, but as demand grew, so too did confusion. Machine doubling, strike doubling, and die deterioration doubling all clouded the waters. Not every apparent error was genuine. The authentic wide AM examples had distinct markers, sharp separation between the A and M, a specific design positioning of the initials, FG, for engraver Frank Gasparo on the reverse, and in some rarer cases, additional doubling visible in E pluribus unum. Misidentifications became common, and the market quickly shifted toward certified examples. Coins graded by top-tier services were now being valued with increasing seriousness. In one memorable instance, a college student in Arizona found a wide AM 2000 cent in a coin jar his grandmother had saved. The coin was submitted for grading and received a high mint state designation. At auction, it sold for $14,000, a moment that sent ripples through the collector world and prompted a renewed hunt across America's coin jars and bank rolls. Stories began to surface of similar finds, some authentic, others wishful. But through all the noise, Darrell's coin remained a standout. By 2018, auction prices for high-grade 2000 wide AM cents were climbing. Examples graded above MS-65 routinely sold for 5 figures. The highest known grade examples drew aggressive bidding wars. Collectors who had previously focused on older, pre-1960 coins now shifted their gaze to late 20th century mint errors. The idea that a modern coin, a penny, no less, could command tens of thousands of dollars sparked new enthusiasm in the hobby. Dealers began offering bounties. Some offered rewards just to be the first to verify a new variety in person. Coin shows featured entire showcases devoted to Lincoln cents from the 1990s and 2000s, their previous reputation for being too modern for value now completely reversed, but Darrell's coin had one more surprise to offer. Upon a second expert analysis in 2022, specialists noticed what they believed to be a faint retained cut forming at the rim above America, a result of die damage where a portion of the die face cracks and begins to lift, leaving a bubble-like formation on the coin. Though extremely subtle, its presence elevated the coin from a typical error to a multi-layered specimen, a wide AM reverse, a possible double die, and a retained cut formation, an exceedingly rare trio. Only a few such examples were known, and none were in such pristine condition. This unique convergence of errors made the coin one of a kind. Darrell, long silent in the wake of attention, finally agreed to a private appraisal. The estimated value range stunned even veteran collectors. The coin, once overlooked in an everyday roll, was now conservatively estimated between $36,000 and $106,000, depending on buyer interest and auction setting. While many wide AM 2000 cents had surfaced since, none carried the combined characteristics that made Darrell's coin an icon of the unexpected. Even now, years later, the story continues to inspire. Collectors of all ages carefully study their 2000 pennies, examining the spacing of the letters, looking for the hint of a rare design meant for proof sets but accidentally released into circulation. The wide AM variety, once buried in obscurity, now lives at the center of a broader movement celebrating modern errors. And each new discovery adds to the legend. The 2000 US 1-cent penny, a coin never intended to make history, stands as a powerful example of how precision and imperfection can dance so closely together. A penny that began as just another product of industrial repetition became a rare artifact of minting mystery, with a value today ranging between $36,000 and $106,000, depending on grade and attributes. It is a silent reminder that even in a world driven by speed and automation, the smallest details can hold the greatest surprises. The final year before a major design change is often overlooked, overshadowed by the anticipation of what's coming next. In 2008, as the U.S. Mint prepared to mark Abraham Lincoln's bicentennial with a dramatic redesign for the following year, the familiar Lincoln Memorial reverse struck its final regular issue appearance. Millions of coins were pressed with the same trusted design Americans had grown up seeing since 1959. Lincoln's solemn profile remained intact, and the iconic memorial stood resilient on the reverse. But what no one realized at the time was that in this unassuming final year of a long-standing design, a rare error quietly took shape, one that would not be noticed until years later when the details of a single penny refused to align with the expected narrative. In a modest suburb outside Cleveland, a retired mail carrier named Hank spent his free time organizing and cataloging the coins he had saved from decades of daily change. It was a peaceful ritual for him. Boxes of rolls, magnifying lenses, and soft cloths were arranged with the care of a museum curator. He wasn't hunting for treasure, he simply admired history in miniature. But one night, while flipping through a roll of 2008 Lincoln cents from a local bank, a single coin made him pause. Something was off. The letters on the obverse, particularly, "In God We Trust," looked unusually thick and shadowed. The word "liberty" also showed an uncanny boldness. At first, Hank chalked it up to his aging eyes. But as he turned the coin under the light again, the anomaly only became more apparent. Driven by curiosity, he examined the coin under his jeweler's loupe. The doubling was visible, subtle but distinct. The kind of doubling that suggested a true double die, not the more common machine doubling that often plagued modern cents. This doubling wasn't flattened or shallow, it had depth, complexity, a layered appearance, especially around the "God" and "Liberty" inscriptions. Hank, who had spent a lifetime delivering mail and watching the world through windshield glass, suddenly found himself holding something very different in his hands, a coin that might rewrite what collectors thought they knew about the 2008 series. He began reaching out, emailing photos to coin forums and veteran numismatists. The feedback trickled in slowly but carried an unmistakable tone of intrigue. This wasn't a known error. There had been rumors of minor oddities in the 2008 mints, but nothing confirmed, nothing catalogued. What Hank had stumbled upon was potentially undocumented, a double die obverse variety from the final year of the memorial reverse. The implications were staggering. If confirmed, it would mean that in the final breath of this design's long run, a minting oversight had created a small number of coins with a significant deviation. A final punctuation mark, bold, accidental, and extraordinary. Experts from across the country began requesting access to the coin. Once verified and authenticated by a major grading service, it was labeled as a genuine double die obverse, an extremely rare variation with only a handful of known examples surfacing in the years since. The doubling appeared cleanest on "In God We Trust," followed by "Liberty," and in some cases, a faint echo in Lincoln's eye and jawline. Not only was it rare, it was visually dramatic enough to be recognized without magnification in some cases. This wasn't just a microscopic curiosity, it was an error that jumped out when you knew where to look. Soon, more collectors joined the search. Penny rolls were purchased by the box. Coin shops fielded requests for any 2008 cents with unusual text or heavy letters. Some dismissed it as an overhyped coincidence, a result of common mechanical doubling. But trained eyes knew better. The certified specimens, like Hank's, showed precise characteristics of a double die produced during die creation, not post-strike damage or press misalignment. And because the 2008 penny was so heavily minted, over 5 billion coins in total, the challenge was not just finding one, but finding it in top condition. Auction houses began receiving inquiries. One certified MS-66 red specimen crossed the block at a major numismatic event in Chicago and fetched over $19,000, shocking even seasoned dealers. A similar MS-67 red was rumored to have changed hands privately for significantly more, though the details were kept confidential. As collectors started to take the error seriously, a split formed in the market. Lower-grade examples, even with faint doubling, sold modestly. But high-grade specimens with bold doubling and excellent luster triggered bidding wars among specialists and modern error collectors. As demand grew, so did the confusion. Counterfeiters took notice. Modified coins began appearing online, normal 2008 cents that had been tampered with using crude engraving tools to mimic the doubling. Most were easily debunked, lacking the crisp lines and layered impressions of a genuine double die. But the fakes only fueled the mystery, pushing collectors to seek certified pieces and making Hank's coin, and those like it, even more valuable. The presence of imposters validated the original's significance. If someone was willing to fake it, it meant the real thing was worth faking. In a twist that added yet another dimension to the story, one researcher uncovered a batch of 2008 pennies struck on improper planchets, slightly off composition blanks that gave the coin a marginally different weight and tone. A handful of these coins, struck with the same doubled die obverse, have since surfaced. This convergence of two rare errors, wrong planchet and doubled die, on a single coin catapulted that specific variation into an elite category of numismatic phenomena. Only a couple of such specimens are known, and both are considered priceless by their current owners. The U.S. Mint never formally addressed the 2008 double die obverse error. Unlike high-profile blunders that triggered public announcements, this one stayed under the radar. The silence, some collectors say, added to the mystique. It became a coin chased by those who didn't need headlines to validate its worth. The kind of error that lived through whispers, traded hands at private conventions, and turned up unexpectedly in dusty coin folders across basements and attics. Even now, stories emerge of lucky finds, one discovered in a parking meter tray, another in a kid's Halloween stash. Every time a new piece is authenticated, the legend grows. For Hank, the coin remains a personal marvel. He keeps it secured, occasionally lending it to exhibitions and educational displays. But he's refused all purchase offers, even those approaching six figures. For him, it's not just about the money. It's the story, the journey from a quiet evening in his kitchen to the spotlight of coin history. What started as just another penny turned into a symbol of how something seemingly ordinary can carry hidden weight, beauty, and impact. The 2008 US 1-cent penny, with its rare double die obverse and the enigmatic aura surrounding its discovery, stands today as one of the most captivating modern errors in circulation. And depending on the strength of the doubling and the condition of the coin, its value has been known to reach between $28,000 and $90,000, an astonishing leap for a coin once thought to be the last quiet note in a long, predictable melody. Instead, it closed the curtain with a mysterious, powerful crescendo.